wider listening and following public of Trinidad and Tobago. I welcome you to our post-cabinet media conference this afternoon. I'm joined by my colleague, the Minister of Health, Minister Terrance Deyalsingh. There are a few items that we'd like to announce and discuss with you all, as is the usual format. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Minister Deyalsingh to address you.
Good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen of the media and to the wider public. A couple issues in health. The Ministry of Health would have issued a press release on Friday, giving an update into the imminent arrival of oncology drugs. So I'm here to report on that. You would recall that at the last press conference, I did indicate that drugs will start to arrive in the country within 1 month. I could tell you that that timetable has been speeded up. I've been working with our procurement partner, NIPDEC, to try to get the drugs in earlier, and I've been doing this over the past 3 weeks. NIPDEC has assured me that the first major shipment of oncology drugs, including other pharmaceuticals, will start to arrive in the country as of September the 1st, which is today, through the first week in September. So the arrival should be from today, I have been assured by NIPDEC. Once those drugs are cleared and goes to our warehouse at C40, they will be distributed as quickly as possible to all the public health centers that treat the oncology patients. St. James, Port of Spain, Sangre Grande, Eric Williams, and San Fernando. I just want to correct one thing that appeared in one publication last week when we sent out the press release. One publication had it being made available to pharmacies. That is not so. These oncology drugs are for the public sector and not for the private sector. These are drugs that we use to treat our oncology patients in the public sector. So I just wanted to correct that little bit of misunderstanding. So that's the first batch of drugs. The second batch of oncology drugs will arrive within the 2nd to the 3rd and 4th week of September. So within a 1-month framework, and even working before that, we should have in Trinidad and Tobago our full supply of oncology drugs. However, I just want to reiterate and re-emphasize that Dr. Peter Baggan of Northwest Regional Health Authority has assured me that all oncology patients are receiving pharmaceuticals, their second-line treatment, and all are stable. I just want to correct that impression that they are not receiving drugs. They are all receiving their second-line therapy and are all stable and are being closely monitored. But the bigger question is, how do we as an administration solve this perennial shortage of all drugs, including oncology drugs? This goes on year after year after year. And it is incomprehensible that we cannot find a system so that the people who depend on the state can be assured of a more regular supply of oncology drugs. This goes on too frequently. I would have stated, and let me just reiterate, that NIPDEC is the procurement partner for the Ministry of Health. We have a contract with NIPDEC. However, the Ministry of Health, in my estimation and how I have examined the ministry, has neglected its role to oversee its contract partners like NIPDEC, like GMRTT, which provides ambulance services, and so on. It is my position now that the Ministry of Health establish a monitoring and evaluation division, and we've started that already, so that we could monitor and hold to account the partners who we rely on to provide goods and services. In the case of GMRTT, ladies and gentlemen, you will admit that the problems and the complaints you hear about the ambulance services over the years and for the first few months of my tenure as Minister of Health have more or less vanished. That is because I have taken personal responsibility to monitor the contract with GMRTT and to fulfill our side of the contract. Now, because all those resources are here locally, you can see a quicker response. But you have to remember with the case of drugs, we are going to be monitoring NIPDEC. We are going to be getting the information when we need drugs. But we have to realize that we don't manufacture drugs in Trinidad and Tobago. So there will be a lag time for this emergency supply of drugs. It is my intention and my responsibility to put systems in place so that once drugs are available internationally and once our supply chain management systems are working, that these perennial annual shortage of drugs, especially critical drugs like oncology drugs, should be a thing of the past. And that is what I have been working very hard on at the ministry, to make sure we have oversight of all the parties contracted to the Ministry of Health to provide goods and services. So we have put in place an interim measure, a short-term measure of $245 million into the system. The drugs started to come in from since July. The oncology drugs will be here soon, but the long-term solution is for the Ministry of Health to properly oversee NIPDEC and to provide NIPDEC with the information and the funding so that the days of these perennial shortages of drugs can be a thing of the past. So that's a good update on what is happening with the supply of oncology drugs. I will be taking your questions later on this and any other matters as you deem fit.
Thank you very much, Minister Deyalsingh. I am here to make really two announcements and then to deal with one issue that appears to be topical. The first announcement I'd like to make is that this cabinet has taken a decision with respect to 1 Alexandra Place, and I'm pleased to make announcements with respect to that today. 1 Alexandra Place will now be occupied by the Ministry of Public Utilities, and I'm happy to stand here and announce to the nation that the Minister of Public Utilities has already moved into 1 Alexandra Place, and the rest of the ministry, he's there along with some support staff. The rest of the Ministry of Public Utilities is in the process of moving into 1 Alexandra Place, and we expect this to be completed by the middle of this month. That has already begun. The building that is currently occupied by the Ministry of Public Utilities, which is at the corner of Elizabeth Street and Tragreet Road, is going to be occupied by the Ministry of Sport. So as soon as the Ministry of Public Utilities moves out, which we expect to be by the middle of this month, the Ministry of Sport has begun its process of getting itself ready to move from where it is housed on Abercrombie Street towards the bottom of Abercrombie Street to this building on the corner of Elizabeth Street and Tragreet Road. So we expect by the end of October that the Ministry of Sport would be housed in the building that is currently occupied by the Ministry of Public Utilities. So 1 Alexandra Place is finally going to be properly occupied by the Ministry of Public Utilities, and the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs will be moving into the building that is currently occupied by them. The next announcement is with respect to a meeting that is going to take place tomorrow at the office of the Prime Minister at 11 o'clock between the Prime Minister and his delegation, and the delegation headed by the Leader of the Opposition. As the media is aware, you all had raised it at last week's post-cabinet conference. The Leader of the Opposition wrote to the Honourable Prime Minister, and the Honourable Prime Minister had agreed, even before receiving the letter when you had drew to his attention that there was a request on the way, to have this meeting with the opposition to discuss issues related to crime and crime prevention. The Leader of the Opposition has put forward an agenda which has been received, and the meeting will take place tomorrow at 11 a.m. at the office of the Prime Minister. The government delegation will be headed by the Honourable Prime Minister, who is also the Chairman of the National Security Council, the Attorney General, the Minister of National Security, myself, and the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, Ms. Marlene MacDonald. So that will be the government delegation meeting with the opposition, headed by the leader of the, well, we suspect and assume at this stage it will be the leader of the opposition leading her own delegation to meet to discuss issues of crime and whatever other matters tomorrow. The third matter I'd like to use this opportunity to discuss with you all. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were alerted again by the members of the media to a report that had been picked up in the Turkish media with respect to persons who were purportedly citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, about 9 persons. And there's been, quite rightly, a lot of interest in this story and the development since. So what I'm here to tell you is that we as a government right now and at the national security level have been able to ascertain through our diplomatic channels and ties that there were 9 persons detained by the Turkish authorities. These persons had in their possession Trinidad and Tobago passports, 8 of them, as women and children. There was 1 out of the 9 who did not have a Trinidad and Tobago passport. So that information has now been passed us and is going through the channels at National Security to ascertain the veracity of these Trinidad and Tobago passports. So at this stage we can confirm it was 9 persons held, 8 Trinidad and Tobago passports. That information has been passed us and is going through our process at National Security. With respect to the circumstances surrounding how these persons were detained, we are still awaiting an official response from the Turkish government with respect to that. So, of course, we are not prepared to speculate at this stage under what circumstances these persons were held. And I'm taking great pains to emphasize that the persons were held with Trinidad and Tobago passports in their possession. That is in the process of being the veracity of those documents. We are processing and ascertaining whether they are in fact official Trinidad and Tobago passports, etc. So they are still being held by the Turkish authorities, and we're still awaiting that official documentation from the Turkish authorities into the circumstances surrounding them, and of course what will flow thereafter. So those are the announcements I would like to make here this afternoon. At this stage, Minister Deyalsingh and myself would hold ourselves available to take questions from the media. So I'll make it easier and I'll sit next to Minister Deyalsingh.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Minister Young, given that I'll start off with tomorrow's crime meeting. So given the fact that we've had...
I don't know if it's a crime meeting, a meeting to discuss
crime, right? But seeing that we've had talks like this before and the players in this particular scenario have been on both sides, government, opposition, what is the government really expecting to come out of this, and what assurances can you give the public that this is not going to be just another talk shop or nothing, and things may seem to be going well up to a point and then politics from either side comes in and then everything just falls to pieces?
Well, I think what I can say with a level of assurance is that we, as an administration, are not politicizing crime whatsoever. In fact, as when the PNM was in opposition, under the leadership of the then leader of the opposition, who is now Honourable Prime Minister Dr. Rowley, it is on record that the opposition went to the then government and said that there was no politicization of crime, and we supported a number of pieces of legislation, for example, the bail bills, etc., to try and alleviate issues related to crime. So that continues, of course, with us now being in government, that we have absolutely no interest in the politicization of crime. We as a government are committed to doing all that can be reasonably done to assist in the alleviation of crime and to assure citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. That remains our commitment. The opposition is in charge of itself. We stand ready to listen, and we are hoping that they come here with open arms and fairly to really try and support on behalf of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago what is necessary to really take a fight to crime.
Just as to touch on the legislative issues that you all may discuss tomorrow, are we looking at anything relating to bail, anti-gang, SSA, any of that falling within the agenda?
You know, at this stage, I don't want to be premature, and I don't want to put anything that can be set into stone. So the opposition are the ones who've requested the meeting. The Prime Minister has assembled his team, and we are ready and willing and able to talk to them tomorrow. So we await their conversations tomorrow. And we certainly hope, on behalf of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, it's not going to be a talk shop and certainly not a play at politics.
Minister Young, the opposition has put forward its agenda, but does the government have a specific agenda going into that meeting tomorrow in terms of things that it would like to discuss with the opposition?
Well, the government has received the opposition's agenda. We have taken a look at it, and as I say, they are the ones who requested the meeting. So we stand ready to discuss with them what they've put on the table. As you would have seen from what they put forward, there are no particulars, there are no specifics. So until they start to particularize and put forward specifics, we as a government have an idea of what needs to be done. And, you know, we've already put out our legislative agenda, etc. But as I say, really to be able to take a fight to crime, you're going to need to take the politics out of crime.
Are there any specific areas, though, that the government has identified that it will need opposition support going forward? And I'm speaking mostly from the legislative perspective. Has it identified any specific areas just yet?
You know, as a government, we recognize how the Constitution works, and we as a government also recognize that the people of Trinidad and Tobago elected us to effectively run Trinidad and Tobago, and that is what we intend to do. We would hope along the way that the opposition supports pieces of legislation that may require their support, but we certainly will not be hamstrung as a government in that area, in that aspect.
On the issue of the nationals who were held with TNT passports, you said they now have to go through the process through the Ministry of National Security, or the ministry has to go through its processes. What is the process right now? What
Well,
has
by
to take
definition,
place?
it's national security, so I can't delve into too much specifics, but initially, there will be a looking at the passports to ascertain, as I said, their veracity and whether they are properly issued to the persons who were held with the passports. And thereafter, there are processes in place in these types of situations that the national security machinery has in place that have already begun. But I can't get into the specifics.
And you said you're still awaiting official response from the authorities. Is there any time frame when you may get that response?
Unfortunately not. I mean, we have been following up assiduously, and we continue through our diplomatic channels to be maintaining that, you know, we really would like assistance as soon as is possible. But as we are all aware, Turkey has had its challenges over the last few weeks, and so we just wait on Turkey to provide us what information they can at an appropriate time, hopefully.
And has the government been able to find out under what conditions these nationals are being held?
When you say under what conditions,
Are they all right? Are they?
we have had no suggestion to the opposite of that.
Melissa Rastrat, C News. Going to the one Alexandra Place that you brought up, that had been an issue that was raised previously, that the building was rented, I think, for some 45 million over a period of 5 years by the People's Partnership Government, and it remained unoccupied. Why now has Cabinet decided to occupy that building instead of moving somewhere else?
Well, yes, you're quite correct. I mean, this has been an issue, and from the time we came in as a government, we had an assessment done. There was a subcommittee of Cabinet put together and also of bureaucrats to take a look at it to ascertain the suitability, etc. And it was found that it continued to be a suitable building, and we have been moving as quickly as possible. There were a number of outstanding items and elements with respect to the building. Under the previous administration, there are issues surrounding the procurement and the outfitting of the building that now may be subject to litigation and that we're looking at and we're having investigated. But in the meantime, we have taken a decision that it has been way too long that the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago have been paying rent associated with the building and it's not being utilized. So a number of ministries who have been looking for new office space had put forward their proposals as to accommodation. That had to go through a process of assessment because they were competing needs and requirements of various ministries, and Ministry of Public Utilities was found to be the one that would be best suited there, and we have moved as quickly as possible to have it properly occupied.
Now, given the government's budgetary constraints at this time, what are the rental fees like now? Has anything been adjusted?
Of course, we are very, very mindful of that, and there was a negotiation element with respect to the rental.
Well, could you tell us the cost if you've
At
adjusted
this stage, I don't want to get into the specifics of what it is going to cost, but it certainly is not going to cost more than it was costing the previous administration. In fact, so there's not going to be an increase in the cost of rental.
And the lease arrangement, is it for some months? Is it for a few years?
We are proposing a lease arrangement for the next 3 years.
This question is for Minister Deyalsingh. When those meds, those oncology meds get into the C40, to the warehouse, what is the turnaround time like?
We are trying to expedite that to make it as short as possible within a couple of days. Once they get into C40, within 24 hours they should be out.
And this week and last week you said it, that all cancer patients are stable.
That is the assurance I was given by Dr. Peter Baggan, that they have been stable on their second-line treatment. No cancer patient was denied any pharmaceutical. They were all very stable on their second-line treatment.
All right. And a situation, I think, at Port of Spain General Hospital, are you aware that some of the pharmacists there, their licenses have expired, so that they're now, one pharmacy, I think, has a license, and everyone is sort of bombarding that one, so it's making it difficult there. Are you aware of that situation?
The issue of pharmacists and licensing needs to be sorted out by the Northwest Regional Health Authority and the Pharmacy Board. Is it that you are saying individual pharmacists are not licensed?
Yeah, they've expired. So they
What has expired? Okay,
The
a pharmacist.
pharmacist contracts with the Port
Oh,
of Spain
that's
General
different. You
Hospital
said
have expired.
licenses.
My
That's what you
apologies,
had me
yes.
totally
Yeah.
confused.
Their contracts have expired.
Those contracts will be the responsibility of the Northwest Regional Health Authority. As you know, the Ministry of Health is not the employer of pharmacists. That is the responsibility of the Northwest Regional Health Authority, and that's what you have a board for. And it is their responsibility to issue new contracts, and I have all faith in the board that they will do their due diligence and issue the contracts as need be. That is the responsibility of the board of the Northwest Regional Health Authority. And I will make sure that they do their job so that patients don't suffer again.
Minister Young, I just wanted to go back to the issue raised by my colleague about one Alexandra. As you're familiar, this building has a very long history, going further back beyond the partnership as well. And one of the allegations which the current opposition has raised very frequently is in terms of the whole issue of rental and all of that is the connection or alleged connection to the current Attorney General. So in terms of this new dispensation as to how the moving forward with occupying one Alexandra, is there anything with respect to those matters which the opposition has raised which have any credence now?
Thank you for the opportunity to correct what misinformation may exist out there. There is a connection with the current Attorney General. The current Attorney General's in-laws are the owners of One Alexandra Place, but this cabinet and the Attorney General himself have been very, very scrupulous in how One Alexandra Place has been dealt with. At all points in time, the Attorney General has recused himself. He has not participated in any discussion, in any deliberation, and most certainly has not participated in any decision-making under this administration with respect to One Alexandra Place. And that is properly minuted and recorded and very, very careful. It's been dealt with very, very carefully.
Okay, so therefore, we can safely say that this whole matter with One Alexandra has been dealt with above board. There's nobody involved here who has any type of beneficial interest of any kind. Yes?
You can certainly say that from the 7th of September 2015 come forward.
Right.
Everything in dealing with One Alexandra Place by this current administration has been dealt with completely above board and with the highest levels of due diligence and scrupulity.
So if you were saying earlier, we're looking at a 3-year lease, so that will be a 3-year lease for the for public utilities to occupy there?
Correct. This is a 3-year lease for public utilities to be the anchor tenant, to be the tenant for the building from the 1st of September 2016 going forward.
Okay. So therefore, where will they go after that? Is there a plan to move them
Well, you don't ever as a ministry or as a tenant put yourself, it may be disadvantageous to you to put yourself into a very long-term lease, especially with government's plans, etc. So we have no intention at this stage of anybody uprooting, but you're not going to lock ourselves in.
2 other things I wanted to ask at this stage. Firstly, you mentioned at a previous post-cabinet about FATCA legislation and stuff, and we know that Parliament resumes next week. So is that the first item of business on the agenda?
It certainly will be one of the early items on the agenda.
Okay, and
because it is ready, it has been prepared. The Attorney General is completing his final review along with the Minister of Finance. So we can expect that to be late.
And has there been conversation with the opposition about support? Because you did mention this was a 3/5 majority as well.
The official conversation with the opposition by the government, as far as I am aware, has not as yet begun. But as I was very careful to point out on the last occasion, this is a requirement in America, a U.S. requirement since 2010. So we know and we've seen on the record that the opposition, when they were the then government, are very familiar with it, very aware of it. We've heard the Bankers Association, we've heard ATIC, which is the Association for Insurance Companies, all come out and say that this is necessary for the financial integration of Trinidad and Tobago and what it does with the United States, etc., going forward.
Okay, very well.
I'm certain before it is late, we will have conversation with them. But I, at this stage, cannot foresee the opposition being a stumbling block or hurdle in having this legislation passed.
Okay. And one other thing, at least for me from now, why was there no order of the Republic this year? Any insight you could give as to why that didn't happen?
Absolutely none.
Well, staying with
I haven't gone back and checked history, but I would certainly be surprised if every year there was a Trinity Cross being awarded and then an Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago being awarded.
Staying on that same topic, the government had attempted to offer the ORTT to the former Prime Minister, Mr. Manning.
His family.
His family. Now, that was refused. But what is the conversation like about recognizing and honoring Mr. Manning? Is that even taking place?
Now, first of all, I'm not certain it's 100% correct to say that the government had offered. A decision was taken at a certain level. It was put out into the public domain. And then, again, through certain means and channels, I think Mr. Manning's family had taken a certain position, none of that being official positions. So, time has been passing, and the official conversation at the cabinet level has not yet borne fruit. We're not as yet prepared to come forward and say, look, this is the decision of cabinet with respect to the honoring of Mr. Manning. All right. Any other questions? All right. Members of the media, I'd like to thank you all once again for your patience and for your questions, and we appreciate it greatly, and we will see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.